Spurs once again have their injury issues, and what is going on with Zach Collins.
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kings 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. The Spurs are back in action tonight out in Sacramento. Try to stay up again, everybody. Another late game, 9 Central, 10 Eastern. Woo, another late game. We're actually going to have fun with that later in the show. We're going to have our guest, Dr. Ryan McCorkle, make his weekly visit and give you some tips on how to handle maybe some less than your 8 hours, considering the Spurs are out on the West Coast. We're also going to look at some other injuries hitting the Spurs. Coronavirus is back, and then really get into the harder matter, and that is Zach Collins. And we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Let's go to welcome our guest, Dr. Ryan McCorkle, making his weekly visit right here on Locked On Spurs. Doctor, we should let everybody know right now, at least on my end, we're having some technical issues. So we're doing this off the cell phone, so please forgive us, everybody.
Hey, Jeff, that is a prime skill you have to have in emergency medicine, is be able to improvise and make what you have work.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, everybody, make sure to follow him on Twitter at AustinERDoc. He is a doctor at the St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center, as well as with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. He'll talk about that in just a few minutes. So, Doctor, welcome back. The fans have been loving your weekly spots here on Locked On Spurs. You've been a lot of great feedback, a lot of great interaction. I'm glad to hear and see Spurs fans appreciating you taking your time to talk to us about the other side of basketball. Spurs is that these are humans at the end of the day, and they are, they get hurt. But I think this is a good time to go ahead and remind everybody that the coronavirus is not over yet, despite things lessening up and not as strict anymore. It is at the Spurs. So let's start off with that. Romeo Langford has been out, placed in the NBA's health and safety protocols. A great time to remind everybody that this thing is not over, Doctor.
That's exactly right. It is time to get our COVID boosters, and also your flu shot. Flu season started end of September, beginning of October. We are seeing big flu numbers ramping up, and along with that, some more COVID-19 as well. So it is important to go out there and get those vaccines. That is your only line of defense. So we want our listeners to stay healthy and the Spurs to stay healthy too.
Yeah, and you hear different websites, different news outlets say, well, nowadays you don't need to do, what was it, the old 14 days in isolation. What are the standards now if somebody does get it? They just still got to isolate themselves, stay away from contact with others until it passes?
The current CDC recommendations are 5-day quarantine, as long as at the end of those 5 days you're symptom free. If you're continuing to have fever and cough, then you need to continue to isolate up to the full 7 to 10 days if you're still having fever or cough. But 5 days is the minimum now for people who test positive for COVID-19.
All right. Well, there you have it. A great reminder for everybody to get vaccinated and wash your hands, do the little things to help lessen the blow for those who may be dealing with the COVID virus or want to avoid it. But yeah, Romeo Langford is out. Hopefully he'll be back sooner than later. But, he's not the only one dealing with issues, Doctor. You have Malachi Branham. He was assigned to the Austin Spurs, so we're going to assume that something happened in the G League, but he has a left ankle sprain. That just goes back to that Rice treatment you talk about here on Locked On Spurs, correct?
That's correct. Ricen, R-I-C-E-N, rest compression elements and NSAIDs, ibuprofen, Tylenol, that kind of thing. And the grades of ankle sprain determine how long you're out. Almost no ankle sprain is surgical, but they do a higher grade of ankle sprain the longer that you can be out. And with high ankle sprains, which we've seen a lot in the media in the last few years, that you can be out 6 to 8 weeks. Because especially with basketball players, that ankle has to be stable or it will roll again.
Mm-hmm.
When you roll it again, you start to get into more and more problems.
Yeah.
The ankle ligaments never go, once they're stretched with that sprain, they don't really ever go back to normal. So it's easier once you roll it once to roll it again.
Mm-hmm.
They start taking, bracing, that kind of thing, because ankles tend to be a recurrent injury.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because you have also Blake Wesley. He's been out as well with his left MCL sprain. But again, totally different, correct, than what Malachi is going through because of the location of the sprain with Blake Wesley?
Well, Wesley was his knee, right?
Yeah.
And our other one was an ankle. The difference being with Wesley, this was an MCL injury, and I believe it ended up being a tear, a grade 3 injury, so a complete tear, and he's actually out now until January.
Wow.
Because it's the long end of the recovery. If they're not going to choose to do that surgically, grade 3s can be done surgically, but that would put him out probably for most, or if not all, of the season. So they're treating it conservatively, but giving him an extended rest, 8-10 weeks. I think he's not supposed to be back until January.
Wow. Yeah. He is still on the road to recovery. Hopefully Blake Wesley and Malachi Branham can come back sooner or later, because Spurs need bodies. They definitely need bodies. And recently there was Trey Jones. Now, he did play the other night versus Portland, but he was out with stomach illness. And a lot of Spurs fans can relate because we eat too much, or, food poison or stuff like that. But stomach illness, again, that's just simple resting and kind of just riding it out situation for any type of stomach illness, whether a professional player gets it or a listener?
Oh man, stomach illness is just what we call a crash can diagnosis in the ER. I don't know exactly what that means. There's just a myriad of conditions that can be included under that umbrella of stomach issues. But I guess, the most common thing would be, like you said, food poisoning, or what we call gastritis, where the stomach lining gets irritated by eating too much spicy food, eating too late at night, getting reflux symptoms, all problems that you see with people that are on the road, like the Spurs are, and like you said, a lot of our fans are too.
Yep.
That should just be a couple of days if it's just simple gastritis, gastroenteritis kind of condition. But of course, stomach issues can be all the way to, appendicitis, surgery, and being out a couple of weeks. But it sounds much more like talking gastritis, gastroenteritis.
Yeah. Well, those are kind of like the quick hits when it comes to the Spurs injury list. Now, again, this is being recorded before tonight's Kings game, so don't come at us. I got the fans on social media came at me the other day, Doctor, because we did a game preview for the Spurs Bucks. And at that time, the Bucks hadn't released their injury report. And of course, all the heavy hitters were out, like Giannis and Ingles and Drew Holiday. So we were talking about matchups, Sohan and Giannis. And then it comes out, we're like, well, there goes that. So, but we never disclaimed it by saying we were talking about this before the Bucks injury report. And so once again, everybody, we're doing this before the Kings game. So please be very forgiving. We are talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs for his weekly visit, talking about the medical side of things of your silver and black. But don't go anywhere. When we get back, we're going to dive into the main topic, and that is Zach Collins and his recent leg injury. Good. Guy just can't. He has no luck when it comes to that. But we're going to talk about that. What is going on? What does Dr. Ryan, if he could guess, project what the Spurs are doing with him? What is the actual fracture that Collins suffered, and much, much more on this episode of Locked On Spurs. But before we do that, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Unfortunately, life doesn't come with a user manual. We get that. So when it's not working for you, it's normal to feel stuck. Navigating any of life's challenges can make you feel unsure, whether it's a career change, a new relationship, or becoming a parent. Therapists are trained to help you figure out the cause of challenges, emotions, and learn productive coping skills, which makes therapy the closest thing to a guided tour of the complex engine called you. BetterHelp has connected over 3 million people with licensed therapists. It's convenient and accessible anywhere, 100% online. So whether or not you've been in therapy personally, look, there's a big, broader benefit to this. Learning coping skills, self-empowerment, dealing with trauma. If you benefit from therapy, hey, you're going to benefit from this. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. It's affordable too. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to match with the therapist. If things aren't clicking, you just switch to a new therapist anytime. Couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no one is searching for the right therapist. Learn more to save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We are back with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at AustinERDoc. He's with the St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center, as well as the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine practice. So, Doctor, here we are now. We're going to talk about the meat of the show, and that is Zach Collins. He has suffered a leg fracture, and he is out indefinitely. The Spurs said they'll update his availability as needed, and so far they have not updated it at all. You heard the news. You read what happened to him. He's been dealing with a myriad of leg injuries from the feet to now this new one in San Antonio. What is going on with Zach Collins? What did he suffer?
This is the diagnosis that they've released is a non-displaced fibula fracture. So the fibula is that small bone on the outside of your lower leg. So the big bone is the tibia, one you can feel right in the front. And then there's a smaller one on the outside that goes down and forms the lateral malleolus, the round projection you can feel on the outside of your ankle. So that's the end of the fibula, and it goes all the way up to your knee. So he has a non-displaced fracture of that smaller bone, which is much less severe. Doesn't require surgery. I would say, like any bone, it would be 6 weeks to completely heal. But with a fibular fracture, you can sometimes come back before then. So I'd say somewhere in the 2 to 6 week area. It didn't specify the release on whether it was proximal or distal. Proximal meaning up by the knee, distal meaning down by the ankle. But it's small bone. The tibia did most of all the heavy lifting lower leg, so it would be less of a recovery time. But we didn't have all that information. We talked about it last time.
Right.
But that's a great opportunity to two of my favorite quotes in emergency medicine are guessing is how reason proceeds in the absence of facts, and emergency medicine is about making hard decisions with partial information. So that is what we had on this podcast too.
Yeah. He's been dealing with major injuries throughout his NBA career. Derailed one season. He didn't play at all. Maybe we don't lump him in this, but is it normal for just people in general to have chronic injuries as we're seeing with Collins to a certain area? In this case, his leg. We mentioned his ankle, the foot. Now, the recent injury in San Antonio. Is this something that he may have to deal with moving forward his NBA career? Because it just seems to be a pattern here.
Yeah, I mean, you hate the people labeled with the moniker injury prone because this is not. I mean, he broke a bone in his leg. There's nothing that could be done about that. Nothing he did or anything about him, his physiology that makes him more or less prone to that. It's just that he's a big player. He's a big guy, and the lower legs, they carry more stress on a frame that size. But this was a contusion. He just had somebody fall into it and the bone broke. That's through no fault of his own. It's just big guys that are down in the paint. There's a lot of traffic, on carrying a lot of weight on their legs. It can happen. I wouldn't say this is not an injury that has recurred for him or has become a pattern where the same bone is giving him problems or the same ligament. This was just kind of a freak accident. So he has had a lot of injuries in his career, but this is just a freak accident.
Yeah, we saw this in Derek White's final seasons in San Antonio. Remember when he broke his bone in his toe, and then he came back, and then he broke the same but in a different spot within that same toe. Freak accidents, and we've seen this before. But this kind of circles back to our last discussion last week with big men in like Wemby and Zion. You know, this is what happens to players of their size, and why nowadays you see players slimming down, Doctor.
That's exactly right. The less weight you carry in your frame, the better it is in your legs. I think we saw that with Tim. He extended his career a lot by slimming his frame down towards the latter part of his career and carrying less weight on his knees and ankles. And it's a big career extender. Like we talked about Robert Parrish and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as well, how they had a more live, long, lean frames than carrying a ton of mass.
Yeah.
And their careers were better.
So when Collins does return off the IR, and they're probably going to put him on the return to conditioning status as he comes back, what do you suspect the Spurs will do with him once he's cleared for physical contact, getting up on the court, maybe playing 5-on-5 in practice?
Yeah, that's the tough thing when you're having a fibula fracture like this is he's going to be non-weight bearing for a while, and that's going to make it difficult, to maintain cardiovascular conditioning. And they may put him on, a bike or in the pool or something to try to, continue that cardiovascular conditioning. You still lose it. There's nothing like being on the court to get that level of conditioning back. So that's going to be a process when he's immobile for 2 to 6 weeks to then get that cardiovascular conditioning back where they're playing an NBA game.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a tough blow. The Spurs have now had to go to Charles Bassey, a guy who used to play in San Antonio, St. Anthony's High School. You're seeing more minutes given to Pirtle. But then you look at Pirtle, Doctor, and for most of his NBA career, dating back to Toronto till now, he's been pretty durable. Is he one of those outliers as well? Knock on wood, nothing happens to him. He's having a phenomenal season. But you look at a guy like Pirtle, big, burly guy, it gets in the play, mixes it up, dunks, runs the court, and you don't hear any type of injuries like this to him. Your thoughts?
I guess that's one of those cases where the exception proves the rule.
Right.
Pirtle's an outlier. So, it's great he's able to do those things and absorb that much contact and carry, a bigger frame as he has. Carrying that kind of mass, not have a lot of injury problems. So that is you're right. He is definitely an outlier, and good for us and good for him.
Yeah. So all in all, what is your projection time away, including return to the court? How long do you suspect, in your opinion, for Zach Collins to be out and then finally return to the Spurs?
I would guess 2 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
2 on the short end, 6 on the long end.
Okay. So not terribly long. So that's good. And Pirtle definitely is holding down the fort. Bassey is mentioned doing yeoman's work. And you're seeing even Jeremy Sohan play the 5 spot every once in a while on the court. So it is positionless basketball, Doctor, and the Spurs are having to do that with Zach Collins being out. Well, there you have it, everybody. Dr. Ryan McCorkle's thoughts on Zach Collins' leg injury and much, much more. Once again, we are talking with Dr. Ryan McCorkle. He is with the St. David's Medical Center and Austin Emergency Center and with the Backstage Medical and Concierge Medicine Practice. Follow him on Twitter at AwesomeERDoc. We're not done with him. We're going to have some fun with him. We're going to ask him what is some advice he has to give to Spurs fans that are fighting these late night games, these diehard fans that won't go to sleep till the final buzzer goes off and they look at their watch and it's past midnight and I got to get up in 6 hours to go to work. We're going to have fun with the doctor in just a few seconds. But before we do that, thanks for making Locked On Spurs your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, the biggest stories in sports that only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. Now I want to talk to you about SweatBlock. Look, we all go to the gym. It can get a little embarrassing, especially if you're having an intense session. You're just sweating up a storm. Good thing for you, SweatBlock is here. You have customer reviews that give it a thumbs up. Some of them say they wear it, the SweatBlock brand, and it works wonders for them. So basically what it is, SweatBlocks, they're wipes. They're invented by a doctor, and they're guaranteed to work or you don't pay. They call it the SweatBlock dry shirt guarantee. If SweatBlock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. If you or someone you love is experiencing embarrassing sweat odor today, try SweatBlock risk-free today. Save 20% off with promo code LOCKEDON at sweatblock.com. Also available on Amazon. We're back with Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs for his weekly visit. Follow him on Twitter at AustinER. So, Doctor, a lot of Spurs fans have been up super late these last few days. Every time the Spurs go on the West Coast, it's tragic for their sleep patterns because you know how Spurs fans are, Doctor. They won't go to sleep until the final buzzer because even with 10 seconds left, they're down 20. They still have a shot, and they're not going to give up on their silver and black. But Spurs fans tend to drag the next day, maybe less productive at work. Their 8 hours of sleep, just their sleep patterns are just disrupted. What would be your best advice to those Spurs fans that are going to have to get through this West Coast trip the Spurs are going through? Because like I said, tonight they got the Kings, but starts at 10 o'clock or Eastern and 9 o'clock Central.
Yeah, this is something that is near and dear to my heart as an emergency physician. So I guess the number one advice is don't do that. Your 7 or 8 hours of sleep is probably one of the best things that you can possibly do for your health, besides not smoking, exercising, eating right. Sleep hygiene is so important. And I say that as someone who goes through 6 different shift times and constantly going back and forth from days to nights, and the sleep disruption and the constant jet lag is a real struggle. So I understand what the folks are going through out there. In addition, in residency, those of us who did emergency medicine residency, we did 100 to 110 hour weeks back when I trained. That's an 80-hour work week. And you would do 36 on, 12 off, 36 on, 12 off for sometimes 3 months in a row. And so learning to be productive after losing sleep is a way of life for medical residents. And I mean, it's all the things that people already know. They try to a little bit of caffeine to try to get you through the day when you do it once. But there's nothing magical other than you are dehydrated when you lose sleep. So you've got to pound water to keep yourself hydrated. You can use a little caffeine to get you through the day, and then as quickly as you can get back to those regular sleep patterns where you're trying to go to sleep and get up at the same time every day. There's just no substitute for it, but everybody's going to push through every once in a while. And, when we travel, we have ways to get around jet lag. And that's basically what we're doing. We're staying up for Spurs until, 1 or 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
For,
exactly.
Jet lag for our team.
I hope I don't jinx everybody right now by saying I hope the Spurs don't go to overtime tonight. I'm not trying to jinx anybody tonight. But that's interesting you say water. Like, I would not have expected that. I thought maybe you would have said try to mix in a quick nap, a 30-minute rest. But interesting, you get hydrated when you lose sleep. I did not know that, Doctor. Why is that?
Well, we tend to, we get more insensible losses if we're up and moving around, at the time when we would normally be sleeping. If you can imagine this, most people, when they're staying up to the sides, are consuming alcohol, which dehydrates us. We think because we're drinking a liquid that it's a hydration thing, but it actually dehydrates you because you secrete a hormone that causes you to urinate more and lose fluids. And so people are a lot more dehydrated than they think they are. That can really contribute to how awful they feel the next day, the quote-unquote hangover feelings. A lot solved with good hydration.
That is interesting. So you get some bonus tips from Dr. Ryan McCorkle right here on Locked On Spurs. So absorb that advice, everybody. You're going to need it because they got the late game tonight. And guess what? They got another one against the Lakers. So make sure you got lots of water next to you and try to get your 7 hours of sleep if you can. We're done talking. We want to hear from you. What do you think about the Spurs' recent injuries, from Malachi Branham to the pandemic hitting the COVID virus, that is, Romeo Langford, to Zach Collins and his situation with the leg injury? Let us know. You can let Doctor know on Twitter at AustinER. Dr. Ryan, tell us all about what you got going at Backstage Medical and Concierge.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you sharing the Twitter, AustinER. I also have Instagram as AustinEM. Graham. I I'm working in the ER today, but as soon as it's over, heading down to the Moody Center to bless the mood and see the UT men's basketball team play Gonzaga.
Nice.
That'll be some high quality basketball tonight. Looking forward to the Spurs actually coming up here to the Moody Center in Austin this year as well. Other than that, we're just doing our shifts in the ER, seeing musical acts as they come through town, doing the backstage medical, and looking forward to interacting with fans on Twitter or Instagram. Send a message. Be happy to talk about stuff with you guys.
Absolutely. Again, we appreciate everybody's patience on the technical side of this episode of Locked On Spurs. Again, just ran into them. We had our scheduled time, and those gremlins decided to show, oh, well, Dr. Ryan and Jeff got to record. Let's show up and cause havoc. Exactly the way that's happened. So I apologize for any technical issues that you may be experiencing on this episode of Locked On Spurs. So for Dr. Ryan McCorkle, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.